I have met people kind of like seasoned seekers, been around the block, really like guys older than me, really, and sometimes certain things were unanswered and they would want to answer, particularly with regard to their process, So humbly, because it was there, you see, was reflected back whenever the opportunity, chance presented, whenever inquiry rose. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into politics of that, and because sometimes when you tell people too much, they might begin to hate you. And often that happened, because you're seeing as like almost into the most intimate part. So if you are interested what happened, then I told you already after that it's a real deal. You might have forgotten. It's the real thing, okay? What will you make out of it? What will you make out of it? That's a different story. So you want to now re-enter that experience. And I would say, no, let's move on, okay? Let's move on. That experience was there.
So I've been building this question, and it is about different forms of piercing of the chakras. And like I read in Lilian Silburn's Kundalini Energy of the Depths, she is describing these 6 different types of piercings. And in the Kundalini course, we talked about these risings like in a different way, right? Through the Chitrini Nadi, through the Shushumna Nadi, through the Brahma Nadi. And I have several questions to this topic, and I would also like to connect it to certain experiences that I had. So I do not know if everybody is familiar with what I'm pointing to, but
maybe not, but we will give
like a very acute experience I had here in Saunstorf 3 years ago with you. There was one day, like I think we were 5 days into the program, and the process had a lot of velocity at that point, and we were doing, like in the morning, we were doing three meditations after another, and we were outside there, and it was it's so crazy to me. Even if I just even just the memory of that experience always brings so much of that still back, and I feel that in this brief period of time, what happened there, it's very hard to to grasp that, because what I feel like my whole life up till this point, and there, boom, everything happened in this one moment. And yeah, I would just maybe to give a little bit more of this experience. We were outside there and having a little break during the meditation, and I was in this warrior pose, looking or facing that way. And then kind of Igor came behind me and just very slightly touched me. And then suddenly this whole, like, this immense rise of energy through my whole body. I go down to my knees. I hear thunder. I hear this loud thunder. I go down on my knees. Everything, feels like so many drugs you cannot take. Like I feel so incredibly charged and high. And even if I just remember this experience, it still brings so much back of that. So I was wondering, when I read this in Lilian Silburn's description of these piercings, right? I was wondering, like, okay, which kind was it? And I try to go back, like, because she is describing, like, if a person has a huge desire, for example, for merging with the divine, it will be a particular kind of rising. if a person has a huge desire to serve the world, it will be a particular kind of rising. Or one particularly interesting one, if a person wishes to secretly initiate others, it will be a particular kind of rising. So there are several questions I have to this, like the list she's giving, are these like the only types of these kind of risings and how they would manifest? Is it like a one-time thing that a guru would facilitate? Or is it a repeated experience? Would it happen by itself as a kind of culmination? And when I look back at it, it's sometimes hard because memory, imagination, it's getting kind of mixed up. And obviously, I deeply wish to reconnect to that experience. And I'm just putting it out now. Like I had this image quite often of like a cobra rising from my back, like Kundalini assuming the shape of a cobra. And when I read that she would actually describe it, I was like, wow, amazing. And in a way, I'm wondering like if it's useful to connect to this kind of imagery or subtle form, because I always feel like when I do this, it brings incredibly intense somatic experience with it. And if it's useful for me to use it as a kind of entrance into transcendence, yeah, maybe that's enough.
Okay, so I hear there are few strands, and we need to maybe, for the sake of clarity, see what's most important. We can touch on, of course, on all this. What's the nature of inquiry itself? How is it aligned with what you read in Lilian Silburn's classic Kundalini energy of the depth? What you've experienced 3 years ago here, and whether it is important to work with symbology of what that experience might have been accompanied by. You see, so I could hear that there is this, because it happened 3 years ago, but you came to other programs, right? So you were recently with us in Vienna, right? And were you here last year?
I was here last year for the 10 days.
Yeah, for 10 days, exactly.
Yeah.
So, which was good that you came. So I just wanted to make sure that, you see, so we don't just suddenly go and lose ourselves in trying to enter the river in exactly the same way as we did 3 years ago, when it is impossible to enter the river even once, because it's never the same river. That's one. It's more like Zen. So, maybe because you also mentioned that in the Kundalini course, when you looked into that particular section, you have only found the descriptions of various different pathways and all the 6 nadis, right? Where Kundalini can rise. That's because that's what you mentioned. But in the course, we also speak about different penetrations, piercings. Now, before we go to what you have experienced, just maybe to clarify about what you have read, and to make it also for everyone, it is the work that Lilian Silburn did as a scholar by elucidating in her own ways on some of the principal work on the description of these processes, which she has selectively translated from some principal scriptures And she lists them at the beginning of the work, or maybe in the glossary, right? So they are not her words. It's very attentive, very important that these are translated passages from scriptures, from various scriptures as well. Malini Vijnana Tantra, Tantra Loka, mostly from Tantra Loka, because it's a lot of Abhinavagupta's way, as well as not so. There are mentioning of the Ksimaraja, his disciple, and then she, in the introduction, if you read that, says that she did everything possible to conceal and make this work as enclosed as it possibly could be, so as not to invoke the rage of the ancient masters or something like that. Right? It's kind of with a bit of a sense of humor, but she meant it. The history of the book has it that she wanted to dedicate it to Swami Lakshmanju. I don't know if you know that or not, but he refused to endorse it. He refused. And even though she was Lakshmanju's disciple for many years, she belonged to that, what I call the most brilliant scholars who sat at the feet of a great master, right? Like Mark Duchkovsky, Bettina Bauma, right? Even, what's his name, Alexanderson, like André Padois, and all these are like legendary scholars. Lilian Silburn was one of them. But he didn't agree that this book should be published. So she says that in very, like if you study the book attentively, what's written in small print, you'll find that. So then she says that I had no choice but to dedicate this book to the Serpent of the Great Power. Right? The book is dedicated to the topic, to the goddess. So why am I saying this is so that you also understand that, of course, this book was in my possession. It's in my room upstairs, because it is among some of the sources in the currently being worked on Kundalini book in the making that we're hoping to bring to life this fall, this autumn, among the sources. But when this book, when we were creating our list of like suggested reading, that book was consciously omitted, precisely for these reasons of what you're bringing out into the open. Because people have asked me about this book, particularly in the early days back in California, because it would cause a lot of confusion among some followers, students, who were trying to ascertain, allocate their own experiences and find their confirmation in that particular book, which is highly hermeneutic. I had difficulty reading it whilst I was going through the process some 24 years ago. I dated every single book I read at the time, almost as if I knew I had to do that. Even month. When the book will come in my hands, I will write, this 2001, 2002, July, August, So it's an amazing book and an amazing work, but it is almost like needs to be decoded. You see? So
it's very tricky, no?
Yeah, exactly. So you're bringing it out, and also you're mentioning the course, and I'm making it abundantly transparent that yes, there is a lot of sources from that book because they belong to the translated material from the scriptures, from the sources, you see? She discloses them, the passages. It includes extraordinary passage, which I read during the Kundalini course. Remember? There's like, okay, now we're going to read these passages. Yeah? You can see Angela behind you nodding as well. So, And yet, in order to bring this out clearly, a synthesis required. So therefore, in the Kundalini course, it is spoken as it is spoken, with the great attention to be of service to those like yourself, you see? And that's the reason why this became a kind of withdrawn from the advised list of reading book, even though it's amazing. Or at least it should, maybe, if it reappears, should be accompanied by a disclaimer. And disclaimer, so, you know. If, to make it simple, this actually book is more for scholars than seekers between us. This book is like for, I would even say, elite of the scholars, Sanskritists, those who have tremendous, because the book is studied with Sanskrit terms, spledged left, right, and center. Yes, there are annotations, there are footnotes, there are side notes, there are... No, that's not enough. You need to have already access to that, you see? So what you're trying to do now, live, pulsating experience, your own, ascertain it through the book, which is written in French by someone who did not get endorsed by the master with whom she was, translated into English, made deliberately unavailable in terms of its elucidation, because she has to make it then opaque. Reread this introduction when you go back home. I can bring it tomorrow, it's in my room now. Someone can run and I can read it, it's a waste time. Read it in introduction. But why am I going through this is because I want to point out to the value and to the second source. You see, to me this book is of tremendous value, because I sit here. You want to sit here? I hope one day you will, right? Because what you described, yes, it is. You came into this work, you told me you've been 6 months there, right, in the Isha Yoga Foundation. You went through that. Few things you said, I assess you, right, like Terminator. Like, you know. You know what Terminator does? You remember? You know, because he's not human. He assesses people. So that guy is young. He's done that Isha Foundation course, right? So limbs strong, that too, nervous system okay. So, all right. Candidate, right? Also, you have nice demeanor. Of course, there are a lot of stuff that needs to be kicked out of you, perhaps still. And then this is where we live. You have to really tend to your own affairs, right? I'm not going to go after you. It's very simple. It begins to sound arrogant in the camera, so I might as well speak into the camera, right? So but that's how it is. You see, Jonathan? So the value of that experience in itself exceeds everything you can ever read in book, right? That's what now, a moment ago, we have talked about. That's why, I'm sorry, dear, I don't want to mispronounce your name because I already once did. Jake just now was saying that certain experiences she does not feel ready to share. And I didn't, for a moment, insist it. Have you noticed? Instead, we had a very polite, friendly exchanges. I hope everyone enjoyed it. So that is almost as if like 3 years you go somewhere else to look for confirmation, coming now 3 years ago and telling me about this. What do you think I should do? Imagine now, like 10 years from now, I don't know, 20, 10, 5, who knows, these days everyone sits here before their time, so maybe you'll be here next year, I don't know. And like, you know, we just overlap. Oh, hi, Jonathan, what are you doing? Running retreat? Oh, wow, cool. Mine is next. So what I'm saying is that imagine you are sitting here and someone brought a question like that. What would be your response? Minus all the about the books, and just like, what would be 3 years ago I had this experience. What would you say? No, just
That
give it a shot.
It's that it's just what happened. The experience was what it is, and probably asking what is there now. Yeah, something like that.
Oh, see? Very simple. And it is like you said. It is like that. See? Some of the experiences, certainly, when it comes to the awakening of life force, never to be repeated, once in a lifetime, in the explicit nature, in the intensity, in every other accompanying phenomena, never to be repeated. So confusion rises, and this is stuff of legends. When people develop a nostalgia for spiritual experiences, which also is kind of understandable. And mostly, may I point out, when we do not feel as if there is enough integration taking place. So in other words, when we're happy in the moment, right? We can look through an album, we can have a picture of how it was, right? And I'm sorry, I don't want to trivialize that, right? In like when I see, for example, our images of when we were much younger, right? Particularly I was much younger. Amrita doesn't look much different, but to me, when we were like in different parts of the world, you know, Costa Rica, Guatemala, California, British Columbia, you name it, you know, kids small, right? It's like you look at oh wow, it's like I don't just get arrested there. It's like, oh, like life is gone. It was those were the days, and now, you know. If that happens, something is fundamentally wrong right now. You see? Life should be lived in such a way that every memory is cherished for what it is, right? But it is right now also has just as much value and this recognition. So this could serve as a reminder in its own right when we begin to crave or hanker or reminiscent about how we were experiencing this and that. At the same time, but this is important, okay? Because all of us can be at some point like, you know, where is the verve? Where is this? Where is that? You tell me where. Where is it all that? Where is it all gone? Where is it? Where are you? All in the charts here, you know? You've never been around for a moment. Start reevaluating. The knowledge needs to be applied, reflected on, and then it's like we dive down and resurface and live life, not walking around. No. Knowledge has to be like something illumines, and you are staying in that resonance. You're staying in that resonance of that luminosity. As you go along your daily life with all the nitty-gritty of it, with all the ups and downs, the sweet bitterness of it all, because that's what it is. We can also, of course, when you sit here, you would decide how to speak about life. Life can be praised, glorified, beatified, but also can be brought as a reminder. There's a freaking devastating affair here. You know, everyone thinks that they're fluffy and running around and have tons of time. No. Every single day is dying, closer to death. Dark Side of the Moon, the best album. The Pink Floyd, the most sold, but also the best, lyrics alone. Remember the track? Time. Not maybe everyone's cup of tea, not every time, every day, but, it's just so beautiful, so beautiful, like, Roger Waters' husky voice there, like, I'll bring the lyrics. It's just so fitting, The sun is the same in a relative way, but you are older, that reminder. That much closer to death, Brilliant, young guys singing that, So one can speak from that perspective as well, So, yeah, it's the one thing is certain. Only one thing is certain here. Only one thing is certain, that we're all gonna die. Isn't that wonderful? And it's one and only certain thing. Everything else is a speculation. We're born, we're gonna die. Certainty. Clarity prevails. Whatever filled in between, make whatever you will, but do not assume and do not start to pull this wool over my eyes that somehow there is certainty to it. Life tells me otherwise. What do I know? I'll be 60 in a year and a half time. You will decide what approach to take. You see? So yes, with all that being said, very important reminder of all of us. Soon as you start hankering about something in the past, means you are not living in the present. Muy simple. Very, very simple. What's in German? Very simple. Ganz einfach. Is that correct? No? Ganz einfach. Ganz einfach. Alles gut. Like that. Now, of course, sometimes, and this is also, I have met people kind of like seasoned seekers, been around the block, really like guys, older than me, really, really, really. And sometimes certain things were unanswered and they would want to answer, particularly with regard to their process, So humbly, because it was there, you see, was reflected back whenever the opportunity, chance presented, whenever inquiry rose. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to go into politics of that, and because sometimes when you tell people too much, they might begin to hate you. And often that happened, because you're seeing as like almost into the most intimate part. So if you are interested what happened, then I told you already after that it's a real deal. You might have forgotten. It's the real thing, okay? What will you make out of it? What will you make out of it? That's a different story. So you want to now re-enter that experience. And I would say, no, let's move on, okay? Let's move on. That experience was there. You're afraid you will lose the details for your future autobiography? Write it in your journal. No, I mean it. Because who knows? Now we're smiling. Next few years down the line, I looked into my diary, all in Russian. One book, another book. All freaking ideas about this and that. None spiritual experiences. Some written, but not the zest of it. Not the zest, not the juice of it. It's like, why didn't I write about it? Okay, there was a little note, this, like last entrance here, that year, like let's say 2001, and the next is like 2003. What? And there's like nothing much can be said about it, really, you know. So, sorry. But you remember it, you described that now, right? With the cobra, with all the stuff. Write it down. One day you will search for it and it might be useful for others. But right now, I'm not going to tell you, okay, let's work with it now. Let's work with the symbology of that experience. No, you already answered that. Projecting yourself, holding the space, and someone asking like that. You answered it clearly, very clearly. Not for a moment am I going to go there, whatever happened few days ago, let alone 3 years ago, and build up your sadhana now from that. You understand? So, yes, live in awe of that process. Whatever it was, it was. So, by far more important is where you are now. By far. In every sense. Okay? In every sense. So you have to understand, you have to grasp the reality of the situation. You see? You might felt reborn on that day. It might have been your biggest spiritual breakthrough, right? Do you want me to go into now this and then and belittle the real deal of what happened? I'm not going to do that. Why? Why? Because if I do that, it will be a betrayal. It will be a betrayal of your experience. It will be a betrayal of being part of it, in a sense of simply facilitating the space-time. It will feel inflating my importance. It will feel inflating your importance. You see? Why shall we do that? This is why tradition has this, what should be understood. But it's okay, I'm not holding you responsible. We're all here making our way through this jungle, together sometimes. So, you intelligent enough to put this together with what was spoken yesterday when we have brought the emphasis, what is the main driving force in this work. It's all about that. All about that. And it's not always one event time. We can be recipients of grace many times over. This is what this is about. And it's not all experiences would be measured and comparable. So sorry for disappointing you. No kind of like making meaning of these experiences, right? Like you beautifully, passionately describe this, right? And
thank you. That's very clarifying and relaxing.